大家好，我叫 Brandon.
大家好，我叫 William.
And today we'll be talking about the Shanghainese culture and the Shanghainese language.
It's the Shanghainese culture and the language. So, Brandon, what? So, I understand you're Shanghainese, right?
Well, of course.
上海人.
真的.
Right. So, how did you experience this language? How was your first experience with this?
Well, when I was little, I was living with my grandparents who are fluent Chinese speakers, right? Since my parents didn't have lots of time to take care of me.
Yeah.
So I guess I just got incorporated into this language.
Right, and often that's the case for many of us. Like in Shanghai, obviously, you start from a young age, and it's not a language that is taught in schools, I believe. It's not a course that you take, but it's more of a tradition and a way of speaking in Shanghai. So, Brandon, I understand that obviously you weren't born in Shanghai, but you still have this knowledge in Shanghai. How's that possible? How's that the case?
Well, you really just need to interact with someone who speaks Shanghainese.
Right, yeah.
And as you gradually get used to it, you start using it. Okay, so William, why don't you introduce us to this interesting Lego set you have here?
Oh yeah, this Lego set I got back in Shanghai, and it shows the most iconic, most famous landmarks in Shanghai.
Yeah, I recognize a few.
You recognize a few, right? And if you search up any photo of Shanghai, you're gonna obviously see all of these here, especially these ones. This is the tallest building in Shanghai. It's called the Shanghai Tower. Believe it or not. Wow. Very creative name.
Okay.
Very creative. And it's the tallest building, obviously, as I mentioned, in Shanghai, in China. 632 meters. And there's a place you can go here to see all the city. It's quite cool.
And I see the shape is pretty interesting. Huh?
Yeah, it's actually curved. So I'm gonna go sidetrack for a moment. So basically in Shanghai, the soil is actually not that rigid. It's sand, right? It's by the sea. It's a river delta.
Yeah.
And it's right by the Yangtze River. It's where the Yangtze River goes into Pacific Ocean, and that leads to Shanghai's ground being very, very soft, very sandy, very silty, and building such a tall tower like this is obviously very hard. So what this did, what Shanghai, the engineers of this tower did, basically incorporated a very spirally, very easy, very not easy, but very flowy sort of design to make sure the winds at the top just blow through, and so then it has less air resistance.
Oh, so it's to prevent it from falling over, I guess.
I guess, right? It's 600 meters. That's pretty tall. And so let's take a look at this one. This one's quite interesting. This is called the World Trade Center in Shanghai. And funny thing about this is that it has a hole at the top.
Yeah, I mean, perfect for some airplanes to fly through, you know?
That's true. That's pretty true. And the thing about this, obviously, its design is quite similar to this. It's allowing the wind at the top to flow through without blowing the thing down. So it's quite cool. And this is one of the most iconic buildings in Shanghai.
Yeah, I see this everywhere in those Shanghai
right?
photos.
Yeah, this is called the Pro-Oriental Tea Tower in Shanghai. And it's great because there's a fancy restaurant at the top where you can rotate 360 degrees. You can see all the city. It's absolutely amazing. I went there 5-6 years ago, and it was beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
So what about these smaller buildings down here? What do they represent?
This is actually the HSBC building you see here. And these ones, obviously, they're very small compared to these ones. And they represent the more historical parts of Shanghai compared to these ones. Obviously, you can see that in the last 30 years, it's going to be way huger buildings than these guys, right? And these smaller buildings, basically, they have very traditional building styles, very historical. If you see these ones, like this pagoda here, it's a very traditional Chinese, Shanghainese building styles. So when you go to Shanghai, definitely come by these places. Obviously, visit these modern landmarks, but don't forget to visit these smaller, more historical parts of the city as well. They're great because you really see the deeper side of Shanghai. The more, I guess, the more cultural parts of the city that makes the visit much better. Makes the visit much better on a holistic scale, to the fact that you can actually see what Shanghai was 30, 40 years ago, maybe 50, right? Yeah, that's quite cool.
So I guess this entire Lego set is trying to represent the technological improvements of Shanghai, I guess.
I guess I wouldn't word it as improvements, but advancements, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously these guys were major engineering feats. It's not easy to construct these. Yeah. Okay, so Brandon, what is language of Shanghai? What does Shanghainese?
Well, I personally wouldn't really call it a language, since the grammar rules and the characters are still the same as Chinese, but it's just not interpretable by regular Mandarin speakers. So I guess it would make it more of a dialect than a language.
Okay, so Brandon, the first expression we're gonna learn about is how do you introduce yourself in Shanghainese. So how do you say hello?
Well, hello in Mandarin is ni hao, and hello in Chinese is nong hao. So it's pretty similar.
Yeah, and this term, obviously, you can go to, anybody that you know, probably your friends. You can say "nong ho" as a hello, or like "sup," what's up. And then, if you want to ask, "How are you? How are you doing?" What do you say in that case, Brandon? So, like, I think in Mandarin you say "你好吗?"
When in
Right.
Chinese you're saying nong hao ba. And in this case, you can see a little bit of a difference. In Mandarin, you would end the sentence with question with ma ni hao ma, but in Chinese you say nong hao va. It's a V instead of an M.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point.
For example, if I want to say hi to Brandon, say, Brandon, 侬好?
William, nong hao,
侬好吧?
wu hao.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brandon, after that, after say hello, your introductions, how do you say my name is? How do you, I guess, introduce yourself to someone you've never met before?
Okay, well, you'd say in Mandarin, 我叫, your name, right? In Chinese, you'd say 我叫, and then your name. So once again, it's pretty similar, just a tiny speech difference.
Okay, so Brandon, if you go to Shanghai to visit, or I guess to visit your grandparents, your family, or just to visit there in general, if you say hi to someone, if you say 侬好, they'll probably ask you where you came from. They'll probably ask you where your origins are. So how would you say that in Shanghainese?
Well, in Mandarin, you would say 你哪里来的? But in Chinese, you say 侬啥地方来了? So you can see a little bit of a contrast in the grammar, but still pretty much the same.
Yeah, and you can also say, I'm Shanghainese. I come from Shanghai, which is 我是上海人, which means I'm Shanghainese. And let's say if you came from Beijing, you say 我是北京人. Or let's say if you came from Hong Kong, you can say 我是香港人. And so there's a little, every single place is not the same pronunciation in Mandarin, and you can see that in Shanghainese. Let's say we're visiting Shanghai together. We're best bros.
Yeah.
We're visiting Shanghai together.
Of course.
And a random guy at the restaurant asks you, we're visiting, right?
Yeah.
And they ask you, are you guys friends? How would that translate in Shanghainese?
So I guess in Mandarin, we would say 我们是朋友,
right?
And in Chinese, you say Allah, which is a big difference, and Allah zi bang ye. So you can tell there's more of a contrast now. It's a little less recognizable in Mandarin for a Mandarin speaker.
And lastly, how would we say goodbye in Shanghainese? How would you say, oh, see you later, or something? How would we say that?
So we'd say 再会, which I don't really know what it translates to in Mandarin.
So that would be like 再见.
Yeah.
再见, right? Something like that in Mandarin. Okay, so Brandon, obviously, that was just a basic overview of the Shanghainese language, what you might expect to hear in a common dialogue between Shanghainese people. So
why don't we try that out? You know?
侬好.
Hey, 侬好.
侬叫啥?
我叫 Brandon. 侬叫啥?
我是 William. 侬好.
侬好.
侬今早好吧?
我今早蛮好的。那么侬好吗?
我今早也蛮好。侬哪地方？哪地方？
我是加拿大人。
我是上海人。侬加拿大人？
呀。
那侬上海话讲了老好啊。
谢谢。
不客气，不客气。我要走了，再会。老高兴见到侬。
好，再会。Okay, so today we went over the Shanghainese Skyline, the most iconic buildings.
Yeah.
And also just some basic phrases in Shanghainese, and just basic facts about the Shanghainese dialect.
Yeah, so that means if you're ever visiting Shanghai, you can choose, like, maybe you can hear some parts of it that you might recognize from this video.
Pick out a few phrases people are saying.
Yeah, and if you have a friend who's Shanghainese like us, you can start to use that as well against us.
Come by and say hello in Chinese.
Yeah,
give us a little 侬好.
And then we'll reply something kind to you guys.
Yeah.
Right?
You guys can try to understand it.
Till then, stay tuned. Cheers. 再会。